So getting into volume 4 of Trapped in a Dating Sim, I think if I can start off this video kind of going over one thing that I kind of really like about some light novel series is that when I start reading them, I start to get really hooked on it. And when I picked this up, I picked it up for a multitude of reasons. One, because it's a kind of completed story. I know how many volumes there are. I know how much I need to read to get a completed story. And it's a nice sort of bite-sized chunk. It's not like 50 volumes and it's going to take me years to get through. It's one of those where I'm like, I can see myself finishing this within a year of fully reading it. And now I'm not going to like binge read. Well, maybe I will. Who knows? But it's just one of those where there's a multitude of reasons why I got into it, but one of those is that I get really hooked at the characters. Like, some of them are just really fun, and even though it's clearly pushing a harem route, because in the last volume I talked about the two girls that he's engaged to, the queen, which I do believe he will hook up with the queen at some point later on. I also think, I kind of thought, okay, there's 3 girls so far, and I'm like, there's probably a 4th now. We're probably going to have a 4th one, which is the new girl that's been introduced. It's kind of like the main protagonist of the new game, or the sequel, and it's clear that she's kind of fallen in love with him, and he's the guardian now, and so there's clearly going to be a 4th girl. What I find hilarious is at the end of it, the girls that are kind of keeping an eye on him, his 2 engaged girls, his girlfriends, they then find out it's like 2 timing because of the bot. I'm like, wow, what a way to end a volume. It's like, oh, so this is what 2 timing is. So out of context, and I can't wait for those girls to rip him a new one based on a incorrect assumption, because he has been a good little boy, staying loyal, but my god, are things gonna escalate. It's just, to me, this volume, or this series, could have ended at volume 3. And that's the thing, it could have easily ended at volume 3, and that could have been the end of it. And it would have felt like a really good, satisfying series. Because volumes 1 through 3 have a nice story that has a start and a finish and an end. But now we've got all these other volumes that go through, and volume 4 kicks off sort of this expansion sequel kind of thing, and things just kind of go absolutely wild. But as I mentioned in the last volume, what I like is the fact that he's gone from an overpowered protagonist to not so overpowered. There's definitely advantages that he has, but not everything is slam dunk. It's not like he can just brute force everything. There are still moments where some things can go wrong. There's a little bit of stakes at mine. He still is extremely powerful, but the power scaling has dropped down quite a lot. But it doesn't feel unrealistic where they've just stripped everything from him and he's starting from basics. He's still tried to latch onto some of the stuff that he has, but there are still moments now that could go a little bit sideways. And the fact that he's trying to sort of follow the game's objectives is another thing. Because one of the comments that I've seen with the past reviews on the other volumes is that he doesn't have any objectives, he doesn't have any motives, which I think is completely incorrect. I think if you feel that way, again, I'm just humbly disagreeing, but I do feel like you're maybe missing his actual, like, his overall goals that he's been trying to do, which is follow the game's sort of systems, like follow the game's story. Now, that doesn't mean that he hasn't failed at it miserably by taking 2 of the main girls as his future wives, because clearly he's going to get married to them. So yeah, clearly he's not fulfilling those desires of him letting the game play its course and everything plays out fine. No, he's pretty much going to be hooking up with a bunch of chicks that are pivotal to the story. So even though, yes, he has objectives, he's failing at them in the most funniest way possible. And it's just what I enjoy about the series is that it is taking the isekai kind of system and also the kind of the dating sim kind of scene as well, because a lot of dating sims are mainly female protagonist orientated, while this is male protagonist related. But there are a lot of other strong characters as well, like his sister. His sister is quite a pivotal character in my opinion, and seeing them kind of work together and their relationship is interesting. One thing that kind of dawned on me when I was reading through it as well, because I was thinking about her past, is if I remember correctly, she had a daughter as well in her past life. And I wonder if there's going to be more isekai characters, because I kind of speculated that there would potentially be more reincarnations, because if there's him, there's her, there's going to be more, and there's already another one introduced in this volume, so we've now got 3 reincarnations, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, who else could they throw into this that could really spin things up? And I was kind of like, well, maybe her daughter could be thrown in there just because of the chemistry, because you could say, well, why not the parents? And I'm like, I don't think the parents would be added, because I don't think they really add any value to the story, other than they just be like, oh yeah, we get it. I just don't think there's anything that they could really add to spice up the chemistry. But a daughter of her would be, because there'd be some chemistry between them, and maybe some feelings about what they went through, their past life, their new lives, how they're interacting, what they're trying to do. There could be some interesting chemistry there. It's a potential theory that I could see, that they could maybe add her as a character if they're already adding another reincarnation, which I also predicted. So it's making me kind of think of more outside the box a little bit more. I expect more reincarnations. I expect there to be a half a dozen of them. What they'll end up doing in the story, who knows? But it is interesting that, and this is the thing, people say he doesn't have a goal, but this new character that's been introduced does also have the same goal, as kind of like getting the game to stay on its correct course. But there are a multitude of avenues, so some of them are going in one direction and he's going in one direction. Like the different forks in the pathways. That also makes it funny, because one character's trying to do one thing, another character's trying to do this another thing, but they've got both the same objective. Just how they're going about it. That's a good way to make things interesting. I just feel like the author's done a really good job at adding different layers to this story and adding some interesting chemistry. It's what I love about it, and that's what I meant at the beginning, is that when I get into a light novel series, I try to pick ones that I really find interesting. I know some people can say, oh, you do videos for views, but I'm like, first I try to find something that I personally would enjoy, and then others would enjoy hearing about me talk about, and kind of mix those together. But this is just so much fun. But the thing that's also interested me is, how will season 2 turn out? Because season 1 is 2 volumes, which is volumes 1 and 2, the 1 plus 1. Then season 2 could potentially follow the same route, or it could do 1 volume, because volume 3 is quite large. So they could do 1 volume for the whole season, or they could maybe do, depending on how volume 5 goes, they could try and do 3 volumes into 1 season. I'm a bit concerned about that, but we'll have to wait and see, because this ends on a really interesting cliffhanger, which, to be honest, would be hilarious. But also, one of the things they could do is, if they do a season 2, they could do a double core. That is potential. And again, I'm recording this before the season comes out, so I don't know when I'll upload this, because I've still got other volumes to upload. So it's just a curiosity kind of component. The pacing is very good as well. I love the pacing. It kind of just flows very nice, very naturally. One of the things that I don't like about some light novels is they can feel very padded, and they just kind of feel like they're just kind of drawing you out, and you kind of get bored. And sometimes that happens when you don't really care about certain characters. And even though I don't like the boyfriends of his sister, as far as I just think they're idiots, but they're entertaining to read. See, that's the thing. It reminds me of Spider, reincarnated as a spider, is that I hated the elf guy, but it was entertaining to read about him. Because, yeah, he's an evil person, but it's fascinating to see that story play out. That's the same situation here. The guys are just useless twats that just have no brain sense, no brain capacity. They're just like rocks that are sentient. That's an insult to rocks. Rocks still have a purpose on the planet. They sit there and they add some looks to the world. These guys they do not contribute anything whatsoever. They are useless, but they're so funny to read about because of just how stupid they are. And the fact that poor her, she's got to cook, clean, manage the money, they're so useless. So she ended up trying to get a harem, reverse harem, to try and build this luxurious lifestyle, and now she's basically parenting for a bunch of adult man children or teens. It's just kind of funny how it flipped. And the new character that gets introduced, that's the reincarnation chick, she's basically mocking her, being like, why the hell did you go for a reverse harem? You're getting a bit greedy there. So I just thought that was a funny backhanded attack. Now, talking about the volume itself, there's a lot of stuff to do with the powers of the Alzur's sacred tree. And it bearing its fangs at Leon and all that kind of stuff, and them having to do some like code system where they do duels and they've got to follow, like, if I swear on the sacred tree, and there's the sort of the priestess kind of thing, and then the kind of the defend or the protector, the guardian. There's some interesting new things added to this story, because like you had all the politics in the past 3 volumes, which is clearly going to come creeping up. They keep bringing it up throughout the volume, being like, this stuff could end up sort of rippling over each other. And then you've got this whole sacred tree, these different sort of noble families, which again follows very closely. And I like that kind of whole medieval fantasy mixed in with a lot of different other elements, and they're kind of shoving a lot of elements together, which is very true to how the original story started, where it's just like a game that just shoved like 50 different elements into a game and just hoped it made sense. And it continues to do that, which I think is just chaotic in nature, but it's so well blended, because there are many light novel series that try to throw a lot of different components in there to try and add spice, and it just doesn't work. Or they add something and then have it for 1 volume and then abandon it, or they very little context to it, or like levels of layers to it. With this, they continue to add more to it. Yes, there's a lot of other layers going on at the start, but as they add more, they kind of intertwine together and they continue to complement each other. So I think that's very good on how they've got the noble system, the school, the sort of hierarchy, the way they look at each other, the prejudice against each other. Like, there's a lot of cool components there. And the relationship between Leon and the 2 girls, where they're still at, because they have to stay where they're at, so they're kind of sending letters to each other through the robots, which I think is very clever how they've done that. Emails. The girls have no idea what that really means, but he does, and that's kind of how they're communicating. And it's a good way of adding instant communication. So even though there's a massive distance, instead of adding some magic of teleportation and there's like power creep there, they've just gone, oh, look, emails. Brilliant. I love it. They're using the technology to their advantage to allow good forms of communication between large distances without also trivializing distances as well. It's like, think of like an MMO where you've got these large distances from point A to point B, but instead they just go, oh, let's just add epic flying, and you zip across the map in like 30 seconds. And it's like, okay, well, that just kind of trivialized the whole distance. Now it doesn't feel so grand and epic of the world. The world feels very large and grand and epic, but they still have that ability to communicate with each other. I know it's a trivial thing to kind of point out, but when I'm looking at these kinds of series, I really like when they do stuff like that, where they really are careful about the amount of creep when it comes to power, systems, that kind of stuff. And especially in a story like this, where it is based on game systems, you could add stupid amount of power creep and just make the stories really dumb. And that happens a lot in a lot of isekai light novel series. The other thing, though, too, is Leon being Leon, punching people, beating people up, getting the people to rally behind him. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. My boy himself, he is the brute force that we all desire to be, beating down injustice, beating down hypocrisies, while also being a coward yourself. It's beautiful. It's art. It really is. And it's kind of funny looking at the other kids from the other academy place. They've kind of got a lot of respect for him as well, so they kind of grew to hate him, and now they kind of grow to respect him and like him because of the whole what he's done for them. And there's still that kind of power vacuum going on as well, and that's another good component, is they're not ignoring what's going on in the other places. They're drip feeding you some of it, being like, oh yeah, there's a couple of things going on. They're not info dumping, but they're drip feeding, so you don't feel overwhelmed while you've got all this other new stuff going on as well, but you also don't feel disconnected from it as well. It's a very, very good balance of how they go about this volume. So I'd love to ask the question off to you. What are your thoughts about volume 4 of the light novel series? The Alza Republic, the Academy, these twins being added, one of them being a reincarnation, the Republic's nobility, the oath of the sacred tree, and of course the betrayal. I'm reading all the chapters off and then kind of summarizing them very quickly. The betrayal between the little orb himself, the ball of metal, betraying Leon, and then actually gathering data and actually helping Leon at the end. Good. I knew that was going to happen. Predictable, but a good predictable. And then you've got the whole sort of interesting way that they see adventurers in this world as well. And then the sacred tree sapling, how there's still items in there. All of these different components kind of thrown together. It's a great volume. Love how it's mixed together. But I do feel like the next volume is going to be very pivotal in him trying to see what his part is to play, because now he's the Guardian. So, and the Guardian's meant to be the love interest for this new girl, which is one of the twins. So one of the twins is the main love interest for the Guardian and the sort of sequel / expansion, however you want to go about it. And then the other girl is the reincarnation. So for those that are just watching it as an anime only, spoilers, but for light novel readers, you know exactly what I mean. And very interesting how they went about that, because they could have just had two twins and there'd be no connection, like just be like two random girls, one of them's a love interest, the other one's just like an overly clingy sister, and it could have been that. But adding the reincarnation element to it, very, very good. And then the last component is this other noble family that has the father, the girl, and the mother that all see Leon as his son, son and then brother for the other girl, because apparently this other kid named Leon died at a young age that was very similar to Leon. And then Leon talks about how he was reincarnated and was ported into his body at around the age of 5, and that's when this other character died as well. So there's an interesting component there, that maybe that these people being reincarnated are taking the slots of other characters, and maybe he has taken the slot of another character in the story. So it's not just a new character that's been created. No, he was meant to be a NPC or a side character or something in the story, but it's kind of taken it somewhere else. That's the potential that I could see it being. And I think that's another really interesting avenue that they've kind of just snuck in there, but not made it a major plot point. It's like a side quest. So, there's a lot of stuff going on in this volume. So I'm very excited to get into volume 5, see where things go, add more to the review of this everlasting growing series. And I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. So if you like this video, hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.